Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to everybody who are presented here in the FDP, Bridging Academia and Industry, energy-centric approach into AI, robotics, and Industry 4.0, 5.0 at Supreme Knowledge Foundation. Today, we are happy to announce that Dr. Opita Karmakar, SAP Global Competency Head, Wipro Limited, Kolkata, is present here in this fourth session. Dr. Opita Karmakar is currently working with Wipro Limited as a SAP Global Competency Head, Location Leader of East and DEI Ambassador, where she is responsible for the growth and professional enrichment of the entire SAP competency and carving out success stories of Wipro-SAP collaboration as trusted partners. She has more than 22 years of rich working experience in some of the best MNCs in the world. Prior to joining Wipro in 2011, she was associated with IBM India as a SAP solution architect. She started her professional career in 2001 with PricewaterhouseCoopers Service Delivery Center as an application programmer. Dr. Opita Karmakar did her schooling from South Point School High School, Kolkata, followed by her BE major in instrumentation from Jadavpur University in 2001, PGDE-BM from XLRI in 2013 and PhD in Management Studies from Techno India University 2023. She has received many rewards and recognitions like Best People Leader Award 2017 from Wipro Chairman Ajit Premji, highest award of Wipro at Senior Manager or Director level. OTTA Award at IBM Outstanding Technical Talent Award SAP Integration with IBM Payment System filed for patent. Young Supply Chain Innovation Award from WPUT, West Bengal University of Technology, for her paper on impact of COVID on MSME. Got the Best Practice Leader Choice Award, PAN Wipro in 2023. Face of Wipro Award for multiple years in succession 2012, 2013 and 2014. Certified DISSM Disciplined Agile Senior Scrum Master 2022. Certified Coach for various Management Development Program. Distinguished Member and Certified Coach for PMI, Dell Carnegie Certified High Impact Presenter, SAP Activate Certified Project Manager, SAP ABAP on HANA Certified Programmer. She has published various papers on Agile adoption from various industries in national and international journals. In addition, she is also the Mrs. India Beauty Pageant winner 2022, core committee member of DI Wipro, EHS Ambassador for SAP Wipro Partnership Program, and lot more. Ma'am, we are really thankful that you are here. I know this is not it. There's a lot more, I think. Okay, so we are really happy that ma'am is present here. Our departmental chair, CSE, IT and EC, Professor Dr. Jubashis Sarkar. Please allow him to welcome. So let's start our session 4. Ma'am?
Sure. Do I need the mic or am I audible? Is it better? Is it better with the mic or without? Mic is okay? Or without?
Without mic is also.
Let me start without. In case we are facing a difficulty, I'll switch over to the microphone option. It's a small room. With the mic, it will create a lot of echoes as well. Okay, so good afternoon everyone. It's my privilege to be a part in this highly esteemed program. I am solely from industry, so pardon my ignorance in case I am not able to address all your questions, which is strictly are coming from a very academic mindset or academic background, because I don't have an academic experience as such. Through and through, I have been in IT industry and I have born and brought up there. So I will share my experiences on the future of IT industry in terms of AI, ML, robotics and so on. I will try to make the session more interactive because I have always felt that way. If the session is interactive, then our gain of learning is also more. And it's not one-way traffic always. I'll also learn a lot of things from all of you here because I could see very senior faces, very dynamic set of people. So I'm also indebted that way to be here and share certain thoughts which we have kind of put together to make this session more interactive and knowledge sharing. So before I start the session, I would like to hear from you that from your perspective, what is that you want to know from an industry standpoint in terms of AI, ML, robotics? What is that your interest area lies? Maybe I'll try to hear from you first and then move forward. You can answer me in a group aspect. This is what you would try to understand from this particular session. Okay, so should we start with this group first? What is your agenda and what you want to know mostly from industry standpoint? A little bit of background also from the group.
Actually, ma'am, we are from electronics background. So this, me and Ashika. So we want to ask that how we can prepare the students so they can cope up with the new technologies.
Okay.
And then from as they are having this knowledge of the little bit knowledge of in the programmings and all, and mostly they are having the knowledges in the electronics perspectives.
Understood.
Yeah. So then how we can grow up their knowledges so that they can resist this environment. So that is the first question from us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We will move to the next. If you have something more to add, you might please add on top of it.
Yeah.
The next group. Any one of you can just let me know.
We want to know how AI will affect our academics.
Okay.
That means academics will be benefited or it will have some disadvantage also. Means students, because we know through ChatGPT students are taking undue advantage also. So how to set our student mindset so that they take better out of it and not simply because if something is user friendly, it also becomes ignorant also.
Yes.
Details that we want to know.
Very good. Thank you so much. Move the Okay.
That's also my point of view is if AI in near future means after 20 years or 15 years, how AI can demonetize any drawbacks that can take part to the young generation after our generation. Means not us, the generation is after us.
Yes.
Will AI be very fruitful or will be helpful or will be advantageous to them or not? That can be the question. Added with the question that is government stored in the academy.
Sure. Thank you. All these questions are very relevant given the current context of time where we are standing. So I also thought of developing my discussion with you all in the same line. Just wanted to ensure that we are standing at the same podium. Yes, please. Anything you would like to add, ma'am?
What do you believe are the key skills students should there are certain fields in which human mind excels, such as painting, such as sculpture, all these things. Now, if we are using this kind of technologies which can replicate basically anything and everything, then the skill or the mindset that basically we have in our human being, I am fearing that will be lost. Not only that, India is a country of 1.3 billion people, and more the days will move on, it will be increasing, and the employable persons will also be increasing. And how these technologies which are contributing right now, I am from manufacturing background, and I have a little bit of experience of industry. So I know that there are certain places where, in case of specifically mechanical engineering, human interventions are required. And so far the sessions are going on, but I have found that with the implementation of all these things, those areas are going to be squeezed. So how, with respect to the employment generation, these technologies are going to help, specifically in mechanical engineering and manufacturing.
Sure. Very pertinent, very relevant job market and career perspective. Nice question. Thank you so much. Anything else anybody would like to add? In case you want to add something also, we can always pause the session and take it up. Okay, so at present, even as we speak, so we are standing at a whirlwind of time. Even we are lucky enough that way that we are seeing a very significant change in technology shaping our life every second as we speak, and we are lucky enough to actually be the forerunner of this change also. So I believe many of us are from 90s, even I am from 90s. So when we grew up, we didn't have exposure to technology. We were still people who used to study with pen, pencil. And when I go back to my daughter, she is in class 12, appearing for the boards. She has no connection with pen, pencil, or that way the worksheets and all. She is mostly doing her studies. To my feeling, she is not studying, but according to the new generation, they are definitely studying, and we have to trust them because they are going to be the flag bearers of the next generation. So no point in kind of underestimating them or criticizing them, but the outlook has changed completely, 360-degree change. So we used to study with pen, pencils, as I said, doing the cheat sheets, writing down big question answers. Now when I go back home, I see it's all digital, all laptop, tab driven. A lot of YouTube lectures which they invest time on, we used to study in those. So it has changed. Even the shelf life of the mobile phone, which is impacting our life, is less than 3 months. The technology, software or the hardware part of it is evolving even faster than the speed of light, because I'm experiencing that at the various innovation centers I work for, the SAP labs I'm working for. In our days, when we started our programming career, we used to write down a piece of code which will stay relevant at least for a year, at least for 2 years. Now the same piece of code has a shelf life of only 2 months. That is not even relevant because the user need has changed so much. For example, having a good quality camera is a feature of the phone. It is something taken care of. It's something we already taken for granted as well. So features are developing faster than even we are thinking of. So our perspective of entire journey, starting from our career development to skill development to remain competitive and relevant in the job market, everything is going for a big sea of change, and it will be even faster pace of changing going forward, and we have to kind of embrace the change and not resist it. Because as we speak also in the morning calls which happen to be there, 10 a.m. call, we call it a scrum call because I'm agile coach as well. We have a morning ritual of having a half an hour call with all my teammates to understand how they will be spending the day productively. That is the agenda of the call. So while we were discussing productive expenditure of the time, we are also discussing about productivity and cost cutting in terms of number of employee reduction. So that was the beginning of the day, trying to identify people who will be marked as so-called low performers, which they might not be actually are, but they will be eliminated from the industry or from at least from our team, our company, and they will be coming back to the job market searching for new jobs under the term of automation. So while automation is good, definitely time saving, definitely going to shape our life in near future, already shaping our life as well. The question remains true that a lot of redundant workforce will also be appearing in the market because those jobs will be taken over by our machine computers. I happened to work once in the Amazon Web Services in US, Atlanta, and I was in the shop floor where I found that my colleagues were not human beings. Of course, one or two of them, the supervisors and the managers were human beings, but 10 of them were robots. They were doing the automation in the picking packing. So Amazon warehouse is like a very, very huge place where the commodities which are stored are like 10,000 things are being picking and packing, shipping done in a minute. Not even a matter of 30 seconds, 10,000 items are picked up and shipped across various parts of the country. So the amount of crowd computing required there is something amazing. So we went to visit the state-of-art automation and the robotic interference, how Amazon Web Service back-end office of the warehouse of Amazon works. So when we went there, even before I stepped in, I was thinking how this is managed. When we entered, we found that it was a shop floor of robots. Each robotic line of interference had one supervisor who is a human being who's standing there, thus controlling the movement of the robots. And one after the other, the entire matrix organization which was there, completely programmed, completely automated. The entire picking, packing service was done by sales of robots. So that was my first interaction of interacting with non-human or machine colleagues. They term them as colleague. Every robot has employee ID also. Every robot has a badge as well. Every robot is identified in the system with a shelf life when it joined, when it's going to be the leaf period of the robot as well, because like human beings, they also need a break in the sense that for machine repair, wear and tear, proper functioning, so they also have a leave period. So they are entered into the system as their employees. Only thing the tag is different, where they have a separate categorization of robotic employee and a separate categorization of human beings as employees. The number was 1:10. So 10 robots for 1 human being. That automation took Amazon about 7-8 months to automate the entire shop floor. In that 7-8 months, what they told to me might be a falsified number or might be very genuine. 20,000 people lost their jobs because the robots were impeccably meticulous. They made no mistake. Their fingers could reach the perfect corner that human beings were not able to reach out. Their cleaning was absolutely dust-free, which we cannot do. So, job market definitely is something we should worry about. But since we are human beings and we have created the robots, we have to somehow outsmart them and make sure that our skills are now competing enough to overpower the artificial intelligence of robots to our God-given or naturally gifted intelligence. So how we should do that is a challenge, and in this session we try to address those challenges which we spoke about and see how we can enrich our skills in a different way such that similar situation doesn't happen to us, to our children and to our students as well, because they have to struggle in the society. The competition is not only with human beings, the competition is more fierce with non-humans. So we have cobots also nowadays. They are collaborative robots, the most high definition, high-end robots who are called collaborative robots. They are kind of working hand in hand with the humans, understanding the human language, understanding natural instructions and doing the work seamlessly as a human being. Only thing, they don't have a mind for thoughtfulness. They have an intelligent mind but not an emotional mind, and they are not having the blessing of life. So I also visited one surgery for orthopedic surgeon Dr. Shutanu Hajra. He has done some papers and some research work in robotic surgery also, in which the spinal cord dissemination, that's one of the most complicated surgery in the history or in the domain of orthopedic medicine, because spinal cord, as you all know, is having lot of nerves, the spinal nerves. If even a minor area gets impacted, the person or the patient might not be able to walk for the rest of their life. So it is that critical. So any orthopedic surgeon or neurosurgeon, for him or her, the spinal cord surgery is something of the dread, actually the dread. He took me to one of not the exact orthopedic operation center because of ethical and other reasons, but we watched a video in which he has done the robotic surgery on his spinal cord with the help of a robot, in which he was assisting the doctor. The robot, I'm telling it he because of the legal they were using, it was not it. They treated the robot as a colleague. So the robot assisting the doctor was in focusing the light and the instruments to those areas where the nerve cells will be completely carved out of the region of your operation. Because he was doing some operation, the robot was making sure that your needle doesn't cross that line. Because if it crosses that line, it might impact one or two of the nerve cells, which will be detrimental for the patient. So the robot was guiding the surgeon for that kind of a complicated surgery. So it's good as well, because a human being, for him or her, it is not possible to identify the minor nerve endings where it is lying and kind of put the laser beam so pinpointed on that area to make sure the operation is successful. So that is how we are living in a world of robotics, and it is both. Of course, anything which has its flip side has a con side too. So ultimately we are the creators, and we have to make sure that how we use it, how we take it for our own good, and without getting impacted by the severity of automation. So as we go to the discussion, first of all, let me understand that robotics and automation are two different fields in the area of study of computer science. What is the difference? So automation can be anything. We started from 200 years back also, where we used to automate simple jobs for our machines. Any repetitive work that human being used to do, same repetitive work can be programmed and can be done by a machine, means automation. For example, if you are entering a data also, lines of data. Initially we used to do that. We had a very big Excel file, we see the data in one hand, and we used to enter the data entry operators. The particular terminology was called for people who used to input the data. That got automated. For example, you write a small piece of code, and that program can automatically read the data and write the data in the database. That itself is an automation. So anything which reduces human effort, which minimizes repetitive tasks, is an automation. So it is strictly the software part of the artificial intelligence that I am trying to minimize my manual intervention. Robotics, on the other hand, is a combination of automation and hardware engineering too, because the piece of code at the background which I am running is also having a sensor programming done with a set of hardware. It can be very complex, it can be very simple also, but ultimately it has a hardware-software integration, and that particular logic, if it's executed successfully, the machine will do that on its own. That is robotics in simple terms. Difference between automation and robotics. So automation doesn't have any hardware featured in it, no sensor programming in it, no IC programming in it. It's only the software part of the coding. And when it comes to robotics, it is an integrated way of coding in which your coding or the software logic which you are building in also guides the hardware of the machine or a physically tangible device to take the instructions from you and carry forward the task. So this is in a very layman language the difference of automation to robotics. But they work hand in hand together, because you will not find a particular robot which doesn't have an automation coded in the background or having the artificial intelligence to understand the coding and do the work. But automation can be without robotics. It's like alkali and bases. We read in our class 9 that all alkalis are basis but not basis of activities like that. Robotics will definitely have automation in it because it will carry out the repetitive task for the human, but vice versa is not. So these are the 4 industrial revolution. Every revolution has automation for sure. So I got this slide just to make sure to understand that whatever part of the world history we are in, automation has been a significant driving factor to make the industrial revolution. At present, our automation had reached to such an extent, such an eye-boggling extent that what will be automated is also decided by another automated device. So I don't know, for example, when I go to my office or when you are going to a manufacturing shop floor, perhaps if your supervisor asks you to find out 4 areas which should be automated in the next quarter, perhaps even before you come out with those 4 areas that what will be automated, your counter colleague will come up with those 4 areas saying, okay, these are the 4 areas which should be automated. Because automation itself is now driven by another automated device. That is the final industrial revolution where it is standing in, and it is having its own way of communicating, its own way of deciding the market, in which the robots are going to be intelligent enough to guide us for the next set of industrial revolution. They are now devised with thoughtfulness, decision-making power, and rational thought process, which is supposed to be the future of the next revolution. So these are the various branches of artificial intelligence. When we call artificial intelligence, of course, any device, it might be a robot, might not be a robot, but any device which is having the power of thinking and interpreting and decision making is having the power of AI. So these are the various pillars. We just discuss few of them. So first is the machine learning with its 2 facets of predictive analysis and deep learning. What does it do? Like we learn from our mistakes as we grow up from a child, we learn from a mistake. For example, a child doesn't know fire. If it puts its hand in the fire for the first time, it is fearless. The child is completely fearless because he or she doesn't know that the fire will burn my finger. So fearlessly the child puts the hand on the fire, it gets burnt, she gets hurt, she tries. Next time she sees the fire, she definitely not put her hand into it. So this is exactly how the machines are also taught. They are put to very stressful test conditions. Hundreds and thousands of test conditions, algorithms are written in the background and fed the machine. The machine learns from the repetitive mistakes. If it makes a mistake in the instant N, it will store it in its memory. The next time this incident occurs, it will not make the next mistake. So our previous generation machines were only those machines where it stopped from making the mistake, but it didn't know what to do in case of a mistake. Now with the significant growth of IT and technology, our next generation machines are also having set of instructions in which it can, to some extent, think on its own that what should be done in case a similar situation is coming. It's also able to take a informed decision based on the given scenario. So deep learning and predictive analysis are 2 parts of machine learning. A deep learning is when the machine continuously feeds the data and it builds its own database of which we call the known error database, from where if its new signal is coming, it goes and tries to match in the database. If it finds some matching entry, it takes care of the instructions, the SOPs which are given. If it not, then it goes back to the human asking for direction, what should be the next course of action. In case of predictive analysis, it can also preempt the situation. For example, if the situation is working for the 3rd time, it goes back and checks what were the 3 scenarios which led to this incident. And for example, for weather forecasting machines, for earthquake forecasting machines, what happens is they analyze the parameters of all the weather forecasting condition, and if a similar situation is about to happen, even the smallest signals are coming, which can create a similar situation. It does a predictive analysis and warns the people around. I was recently working on one of the areas in which you know epileptic falls, right? All of you know epileptic fall. This is one artifact we are trying to devise in which people suffering from Parkinson or people suffering from epilepsy will suddenly they fall down without giving even a warning or without any signal that he or she might be collapsing. So whereas we cannot prevent a free fall because it happens very suddenly, we were trying to work on mechanisms where it will send early warnings that there might be a free fall in the next 5 minutes by studying the vital parameters of the body. For example, the sweat, the tremors in the body, the nerve impulse, all those things are studied, and if the signals are indicating towards a free fall, it will give a warning message to the caregivers that the patient who is suffering from epilepsy might be having a fall in next 10 minutes, so they can take precautionary measures. Because once the free fall happens, it can create extremely difficult conditions for the patient, starting from spinal injury, leg injury, or maybe broken hands and legs, all those things. To prevent that, we are doing. So what happens is, this particular machine uses both deep learning and predictive analytics. Deep learning in the sense it keeps on feeding the data that what are the preconditions for this kind of a fall. In case it finds a matching parameter closing towards that parametric fall, it creates a predictive warning signal for the caregiver such that the actual incident doesn't happen. So these are the two artifacts. Then this is something which you all use, text to speech and speech to text. These are typically our bots, the chat bots. Though the word bot is there, it's not a robot in particular, but they are able to recognize your speech and text and help you with getting some questions. Even ChatGPT is working on these two models. Image recognition, machine vision, these are all high-ended artifacts of robotics which are there and branches of AI. So this comes slowly with the process of deep learning and very complex algorithms, which I'm not going to cover now. These are the components of AI: cognitive computing, computer vision, machine learning, neural networks, deep learning, and natural language processing. So this is the future forward of natural language processing. You must have witnessed this in our Siri and all these Alexa, all these devices which are there. They actually try to interact with human beings. This is the highest stage of technical innovation we have achieved so far. There might be many more coming up, but at present this is the highest level in which we are trying to imitate the human brain. That how the human brain will interact. For example, if you have noticed that particular Watson, IBM has devised a machine called Watson, which was instrumental enough to remove many people from junior attorney level. For example, if you give a case to Watson, a legal case to Watson, it will do the analysis of all the previous 100,000, 10,000 cases of that category, find out what the judgment has been like for all these legal cases, and also help you with the right judgment in terms of statistical data. It cannot think of its own, so definitely it will go by the past data, analyze what was right, what was wrong, and based on the analysis, it will give the direction to the judgment. So while the judge will take the final decision of what is going to happen for that particular case, all the R&D work which was done by the junior attorneys were done within minutes by Watson, which took them about months to figure out. Because they are also doing the same things, mimicking the human brain. They are also going back to the case studies, reading the case studies, trying to find an answer, what will be the implication, legal implication of this kind of a case. Actually, they are also doing the same thing. But since we are human beings, we took months to decipher, which Watson, by presence of its huge computational power and huge memory and huge analytical acumen, would derive the same results in minutes, which otherwise would have taken days. So many junior attorneys who helped the case studies to be compounded for, analyzed, actually became automated. So this is where we are standing at present, natural language processing, in which I answer or I ask the question in normal English language, no coding is required, no programming language is required. I as an end user ask the question in natural language. The computer, actually tons of coding are being generated in the background, but it seems to us as end user that as if we are discussing with another human being. For example, when I ask you what is your name, you also take the question, analyze it in your, scan the question, try to frame the answer in your logical part of the brain, which is central nervous system, then frame the answer and give it back to me. Actually, the same thing is also replicated for the robot, which thinks like the human being. And how much the thinking will be human alike is the question which we are all supposed to answer as a group together, that how much is too much and where we should also need to stop. Because ultimately, if you have all seen the movie of Frankenstein, it should not happen that they are becoming our guiding masters and we are becoming their taskmaster. So these are the components of AI. Okay, these are the patterns. The highest one being hyper-personalization. In this part of IT automation, what happens is every customer is treated as a unique individual. And have you used Asian Paints application in your phone, anybody? It will paint the walls in front of you. You can try that even now. If you install the software, there are thousands of color palettes given by Asian Paints or any smart solution. They call it the smart color solution. Even Barger has it. I think others also have. So what happens is, if you install that particular app, there are many colors. And which color will suit your room is automatically detected by the particular application itself. So if you place the color palette in your drawing room, how it looks like, you can also take the image of your room, upload it into the particular software. It will show you that in this lighting condition, in this particular background, how this color will reflect. And then you can take a decision based on this information whether you should opt for the color palette or not. So this hyper-personalization is like treating individual customer as one unique entity. If you enter a Zara shopping store in one of the Western malls, if you have been there, you don't need to wear the dress. There is a software, there's a virtual mirror mechanism. If you stand in front of the mirror wearing the same set of clothes you're wearing and you want to try another cloth, the particular three-dimensional machine itself will put the dress on your clothes virtually. It's called augmented reality because it's not reality but you are feeling it as real. It will put the dress on you and make you look how you will appear in the particular dress. So you need not go and change the dress and look it for yourself. And also, this particular mechanism of hyper-personalization is treating each customer uniquely, making sure of your choices and preserve it for future. So next day when you enter the same Zara shopping mall or Zara shopping mall, it will know from the previous, these are the 5 dresses you have chosen or tried. Maybe these 3 you rejected on spot. It will study your face recognition, that how was your reaction while you dropped the dress. Because automatically your body language, even if we don't speak, our body language cannot be escaped. So it will kind of understand your body language, how was it when you dropped the dress. Perhaps if I don't buy it for budget concerns, my face will be at least oriented like the dress, but I cannot buy now. But if I don't like something at all, I will simply drop the dress like this, which will be understood by the computers and will be stored for future record. When next time you check into that store, it will try not to show you those dresses for which you had a strong apathy. And will try to portray those dresses to you which you developed a fondness for. This is good, but now the question again comes, the ethical part of it. Am I extremely exposed to the internet? Because I walked into your shop, I didn't like a dress, I came out, you stored this data for your future reference, and you are using this data to show me my preferences. While this is good, but I definitely don't like my personal data to be stored in somebody else's computer. It can be misutilized also. So these kind of hyper-personalization, though they are existing in market in various forms, there is a strong case of legal ethics and efficacy going on against them, that whether these should be promoted further for business reasons. If it's for medical reasons, if it's for the good of society, for environment, it is good. But only for business reasons, should we promote it any further or not? There are thousands of legal cases which are being fought at every industry, and there are now conservative approaches to kind of demote this kind of hyper-personality. Patterns and anomalies are very, very useful in criminology sector. Okay, I was once doing an analysis of fingerprint study. Have you watched Jamtara? Any of you watched Jamtara? Yes, you have. Right, so Jamtara, people who haven't watched, you should watch that. It's on Netflix, I think.
Yes.
It is an OTT web series on Netflix, must watch for all Indians, which spins the story around money laundering and the scams, financial scams which happen through various channels of internet banking and mobile banking. Jamtara is an industry, okay, where human beings, like villagers, who are very, very smart, very intelligent set of people, somehow due to lack of education, due to their infrastructural problems, their culture is different, they are taught that scamming is an industry. They believe that. Can you please all put your phones on silent? So, from a childhood to tender age, they are taught that if you are stealing money through cyber crimes, through spamming and all, it is not a crime. It's hard earned money. That is how they call it. It's hard earned money. So if you make a phone call to the customer, fool the customer, ask him or her the 3-digit number on the back of your credit card, then fool him to give you the OTP, and then you do a money laundering, and they term it as hard work because they believe in that. That is how they are brought up. In one of the episodes of Jamtara, they have also shown how they mimic the Aadhaar card. They just make a clone of the Aadhaar card. So when you are sitting here, you don't even know, maybe in one of the villages of Bihar or Jamtara district, your Aadhaar card has been cloned and submitted and a false SIM has been taken, and that SIM has been duplicated, suppressed your actual SIM, and money has been withdrawn with that particular. Entire process is thoroughly automated. Huge amount of automation, huge amount of artificial intelligence put together to make scamming as an industry. So one case came up in which we were supposed to identify a false Aadhaar card from a genuine Aadhaar card because the fingerprints are also matching. So we had no clues how to find out which is the original Aadhaar card and which is the false, because everything was absolutely fine. Normal computers also fail to identify which is the genuine Aadhaar card and which is the fake Aadhaar card. That times we had to use this patterns and anomaly mapping to find out. So when we put the biometrics, when thumb is recognized by the computer, it studies all the circles which are there. And the person who has mimicked it, he has also done the exact mapping of the circles of the thumb. So it was not possible. What happened was that there was one person, expert from cybersecurity office. He was an image analyst. So from the patterns of the thumb, which were set in the false Aadhaar card and the genuine Aadhaar card also, at a face level there was no difference. What he did is, he segregated the image into 1224 quadrants. And in each of the quadrants, it was zoomed out, both the genuine Aadhaar card and the false Aadhaar card. And when the resolution was so high, you can understand that this is the thumb size of a normal person. If this is broken down into more than 1,000 entities, each of the pixel will actually capture one small line of the particular fingerprint. And when that is zoomed out, then they started to find out the anomalies and the patterns are coming up to be different. And what they did is, they took some other biometrics of the person where the true data has been stored, and filament by filament they matched and found out finally the fake Aadhaar card. Because the money laundering amount was around 15 lakhs, and for one of the very reputed customer. So he spent, and this took a huge amount of investment also. For people like us, it is not possible to invest because those high-end image resolution, high-end imageography study itself needs very high-end machines. and huge amount of money to be invested, but he invested that to find out that how in future such kind of Aadhaar cards coming can be prevented. And then they came up with a device in which the image scanner itself can identify between the false biometrics also. Now it is under research and development is over. Perhaps the device will also come up in the market in next 2 to 3 years down the line. But at least the law office agents, the Cyber Security Cell of India and West Bengal, they have those machines in which they can identify the pattern mapping and anomalies of a genuine and a fake case. But it is not easy. It is very, very difficult. So these are the two things which I wanted to tell you. These are in the space of new dimension and future-oriented technology architecture. These things you mostly know, conversational human interaction through ChatGPT and all those things. Goal-driven system is something which is your GPS, wherein the system itself understands the roadblocks and then it can take a decision how to reach the goal. Like human beings, we all do. If there's an examination, we calculate that what the number of days, and then how long we should study, which subject we should study more. That is the same logic given for this monitoring system, that if this is your goal, what you should do, calculate the reverse algorithm backward and make your decision making process taking care of all the challenges that will be in the entire journey. So based on the capabilities of AI, they are narrow, general and super AI, and based on the functionalities, they are reactive machine limited, theory of mind and self-awareness. So while these are like old generation systems in which the processing power, the computational power and the memory was in a small scale. So as we are going more and more towards future, we are becoming more and more capable and super capable in terms of AI, artificial intelligence. We are increasing the database or the memory, the computational power, the algorithm, the thinking capacity, the calculative capacity to a next level. And finally, we have reached the place of self-awareness. This is the area where we are actually live at present. These two are the areas, these are all done, means we have made the advancements in these areas already. So in terms of capabilities, we are standing at super capable computers and thinking machines. And in terms of functionality, we are standing in the theory of mind and self-awareness. What does it mean? In the theory of mind, we are interacting with cobots. They are not robots, they are cobots, means they are collaborative robots in the sense they are working hand in hand with human individuals. And they have the mind of their own. So they think on their own also, and to some extent they can guide the human being as well in terms of which decision to take based on the data points. Because when we are also taking decision, we calculate and we derive our decision based on certain data points. So those data points, if the human being study, they will take a lot more time. So these cohorts actually, they do this computational analysis, everything in a very small span of time and help the human colleague to have a decision of their own. And this is a questionable area of self-awareness because robots don't have a conscious mind, they don't have conscience, which we call vivek in Bengali in our own term. They don't have a thought process like that, what is good and bad. If we feed the data to the robot that actually stealing is perfectly fine, they will go and steal because they don't know the ethics, they don't know the morality. For them, everything is data. And if we feed the wrong data as a right data, they will think wrong is right and then they will take decision accordingly. So we are trying to imbibe certain self-awareness in the robots also, such that they know what is really good and what is really bad. They are next generation to think through whether if the data is coming to me continuously a bad data means, for example, I continuously train the robot to go and kill somebody. It doesn't have a mind, so it might take my instruction and go and kill. So these are this generation robots. But the next generation robots are being taught with certain ethics and principles also, so that they don't go and blindly do something even if it is asked to. So this is the area of research at present. I will show you two videos at the end of the class which will be very interesting. Okay, so these are the industrial penetration for robotics and automation. So at the center, which is already in place, we have seen the automated vehicles, driverless cars, already live in Japan, driverless trains, and we are also planning to bring in something. So these are the highest level of automation which we are having. Consumer robotics, which I told, if you enter a retail showroom, it knows the point you step into the particular shop floor, it knows your name, identity, your choices, your choice of toothpaste, which soap you use, which perfume brand you use, and then it automatically suggests you something. In fact, it happens in your Spencer or other shopping experiences also. The moment you step in, there might be a sales girl or a sales boy who comes to you that man you purchased last time, this one, your stock might be empty now, should be replenished. So those kind of automated intelligence are there in the shop floor nowadays. It will predict your choice, predict your purchasing power, and also suggest you something to buy. But that is too much of a penetration as a personal data as well, so that is stopped as a commodity at present. So these are the various areas. Drones, you know, what is a drone? Okay, so drones are now used for various traffic signal monitoring, weather forecasting, also dispatching. Drones are now dispatching couriers as well in highly trafficked areas. So these are the various automation. I remember I once went to Microsoft Office, so it was somewhere around 2020. When I entered, I was expecting there should be somebody who will be taking my identity, like normal welcome, and then helping me into the particular office of Microsoft, because I couldn't find a single human being in the entire office. Big campus, everything was absolutely white, and suddenly there was a small sound, some buzzing sound was there. I was very nervous. Completely unknown domain. I was expected to go and make some client presentation, but there was not a single human being in the periphery of the office. Suddenly there was a sound, and I saw a machine, a robot of course, as just 2 feet I should say, tall, and it came to me, and then it was written, please scan in your passport. So I had to give my passport, hand over my passport to the particular machine. It will scan the passport, and if found to be the same person who is having the meeting 1 hour later, it will let me in, otherwise it will not let me out. But being an Indian, and I was not accustomed to how to handle that robot also, I was not able to scan the passport. It was supposed to be given in a particular format to the robot. If you feed in the passport, the hard copy of passport, it will scan and also check for my physical security, whether I am carrying any arms or ammunition or any offensive device. So all that testing was done. I was shown green in 10 of the areas. There were 10 on a picture board. There were 10 areas that whether the person is carrying any arms ammunition, it was green. I was not carrying anything. Any offensive material in the bag, it was shown as green, not carrying anything. So there were 9 such areas, but I was not able to fill in the passport. So the 10th column, which was my name, identity, authentic meeting holder or not, that was coming as red. And I was not able to understand how I should use the particular machine. So finally I had to make a call there, and then one person from the building came in and helped me out. But I was completely surprised that this is the kind of welcome perhaps all of us are going to have once you are entering our office, that no human interaction, the first level of entry, your security check and everything will be done by a particular piece of robot or a machine or a device, whatever you want to say. You can make it a very sweet looking girl as well. End of the day, it's a machine who will come and scan and help you inside. So this is the security part of it, which is now taken care of in Western countries, at least with help of robots. And of course, there are significant area where we should focus our learning in the medical robotics, because that is one place where it's highly used. Now coming to the career, which you are all asking, these are the innovations we have done so far, but it doesn't serve our purpose unless I know what is in it for me. What should I do with my next generation students, and I myself as an individual. So now, if you have to draw a curriculum for your student, the good part is, first let us celebrate that there is no one line of engineering anymore. It's all integrated line of engineering. The electronics engineer, the mechanical engineer, the software engineer, computer engineer, IT engineer, all of them are going to work together. So it's becoming more and more integrated and fusion engineering going forward. When you are devising your course in future for your students, you have to keep in mind that the industry is not looking forward for one particular set of knowledge or one particular set of skills to have them on board, because now it is very important that people are coming with at least an open mind and some understanding of all these integrated pieces of engineering of how they work. For example, even if you have to make a simple robot, for example, the obstacle sensing robot, a very simple one, which you can also go back home and make with a Lego board and things like that. If you are designing that, it has minimum 4 components of engineering. The first one, of course, the software programming part of it, the algorithm, which is very much important. What are the various language? AngularJS, Node.js, C++, Python, Hash, and all these are the most predominant language. So if you are going to train your future generation, your students on a particular language, rather than doing the same thing in C or Java, also ask them to at least learn on their own, explore on their own this AI ML driven language. Okay, AngularJS, Python, then Node.js, Rust, and I have a list. I'll tell you 10 languages which are most significant in terms of software engineering and robotics programming automation language. So they should learn that. On top of that, they should also be able to do the sensor programming, because that's a very minimum. That's a starting place of integration of software to hardware. The sensor, because every robot must have a sensor detecting system and a sensor programming. So they should have some integration with the hardware and the software. So your microprocessor designing, VLSI designing, which we used to do in electronics, that is the second thing which comes automatically in place. So instead of teaching them something more, you should have the curriculum ready for the next generation language. And hand in hand comes the mechanical engineering also, because more and more complex the robotic system becomes, to build those machines into place, automatically that becomes one of the huge importance. Now when we are depending so much on these robots, the body of the robot is also made with certain plastics or polymorphic materials. So that is also environment hazardous, because today we are having 10 robots in the shop floor or the automation warehouse. Tomorrow that might be 100 robots. So while your manufacturing industry is having a shortfall of manufacturing of certain things where robots are taking care of that particular piece of work, the other side of the story is manufacturing industries, more human labor will be required to make the body and the parts of those machines which will ultimately build a robot in place. So it is a collaborative journey. So we will create robots to displace them from our work, and also the industry will see a different set of manufacturing. So in one of the discussions we had, ceramic industry is coming up very heavily. They have undertaken a very strong innovative journey in the sense that they are trying to make biodegradable robots with replacing plastics with ceramics, because ceramics are earth-friendly materials. So that they are trying to make semiconductors and microchips and the body of robots, replacing the plastic material with earth-friendly ceramic counterparts, such that this doesn't become a biodegradable hazard for us. Because more and more we are depending on the robots, automatically the e-waste is also become very high. So that means the manufacturing industry will see a very high turnaround in the sense of, as you said, many people are disembarked from their job because robots are now doing the picking, packaging perhaps. But for making those robots also, we will be needing set of skills which perhaps is not known to them as of now. We are also here making ethical, this soft robotics is what I call the biodegradable robots, and ethical and regulatory robots is the future, which is not yet stabilized in the market, but we are going into that space in which, as I told, the robots will be imparted with certain amount of consciousness, conscious intelligence, such that even they are taught to do something which is fatal to the human civilization, they will be having a preemptive measure of not doing that. So the field of ethical and regulatory robots is coming up as one of the most important career aspects. It's not only for engineers and not only for software programmers, but people who are from legal, arts, humanities background are also having a strong foothold in the career to make the ethical programming of the robots. Okay, so while the coding will be done by a software engineer, inputs will be given by maybe a lawyer or ethical counselor or psychoanalyst or maybe a doctor as well. Okay, so the input, the coordination of the future generation is going to be multifaceted. It is not going to be a very straight input-output procedure anymore. It will take inputs from different sets of people in which new career options will definitely open. So this is where I was coming. So definitely the first 1, 2, 3, these are all engineering background people and students from those areas. And we are having new terms like mechatronics engineering, which is mechanical and electronics together. So all these are coming up. At the same time, lot of opportunities are opening up for scientists, for ethical programming, for ethical hacking, for psychoanalysts, emotional intelligence, people studying on statistics, data forecasting, behavior patterns, sentiment analysis. So all these are very new terms which we even didn't know perhaps 2 years back. So for example, sentiment analysis is one of the words which we hear very often if we go out in the market, but topics around this were not taught before. So if you are in the field of education, making your new course curriculum, teaching your students, then what I would request, since I am from industry, these are the areas where people are not focusing at all. If one career option is going down the market because of education, somebody else taking a toll of that particular job, we have to educate our students in doing something else which will be input to the automation industry. So automation industry or robotics is taking out the job which are only repetitive in nature, which can be automated. But we have to think beyond for those job options which cannot be automated, wherein we have to put in our human intelligence, the thoughtfulness, the conscience, and all this together to overcome that particular area. So these are the various types of robots which are now used in a very high scale in all industries. Delivery trucks, then these are robotic vehicles. These robots are actually doing the picking, packing, loading in the truck, and also driving the truck. So end-to-end process automated. In various industries, if you visit their warehouse, you will find the robots are doing everything. From the point of identifying the package, picking up the package, putting it into the truck, and the truck is also driverless. So think of the automation. The entire supply chain is having no intervention or minimum intervention. These are the industrial robots which help us in very hazardous jobs. If this was to be done by a human being, then it might create a lot of health hazards, which are now taken over by robots because there is no health hazard for them. It is welding, cleaning, laser cutting. These are the manually intensive jobs in the construction industry which are typically taken over by the robots, bricklaying, drilling, transportation, etc. Security robotics is another area which I just told my experience in Microsoft Office, where the entire security system was done by only one robot. Had it been a human being doing the job, it might need a team of 5 or 6. So one person or one robot was good enough to scan everything of the particular person is going to enter the particular campus and understand. Entertainment in gaming industry, in special effects, like 5D movies, like 10D movies, virtual reality, augmented reality, space travel, which you all like to explore. These are now taken care of by the entertainment industry, automation and robotics. Customer service, I just told you two of the experiences I had personally. One is entering the Zara shop floor and there was a three-dimensional machine which knew everything of me. And there were shopping assistants in Walmart, particularly if you go to Walmart in US, there is no human intervention for shopping assistants. There are drones and robots which are also enabled to talk to you in natural language. If you are searching something and don't get, if you ask the machine or the robot or even typing your query, it will tell you the exact rack number, where it is stored, the price, if it's having a shelf life or not. Everything will be automatically prompted by the particular device. Two device. In one of the experience I had when I visited a particular travel agent, they were giving us tour guides in a form of augmented reality. So if I want to visit Eiffel Tower of France, they will make me feel as if I'm entering a time travel, and I could see a three-dimensional figure of the Eiffel Tower of France, people also roaming around. It's not a 2D movie, but as if I'm standing in front of the tower and it is happening around me. So that kind of an experience can be given by this particular set of machines. However, that is 50% of the enthusiasm, because if I already feel how it's going to be looking like when I visit France, 50% of the excitement dies down. But there are people who are using it to know beforehand how it feels, how it looks like, before they actually get the money. Different people have different priorities, different mindsets. So before actually embarking on a journey and making sure that whether I should put my money in it or not, for example, snorkeling, under the sea rides, all these are life-changing experiences for all of us. So in the entertainment industry, we are trying to bring in this kind of an augmented reality, where you will kind of a virtual feeling of how it is to experience, and then you can take an informed decision whether I should be able to do that or not. So now I have also seen robots making atta mixes. I've seen that they make the dough and they also make the pizza. They put it in the machine, also serve. Have you seen in the restaurants robots taking the order and also kettling the dishes? That is quite common. So all these are our new generation and not future anymore. We're actually living. Maybe in India it is a little less because we are blessed with a huge amount of human population. So it is little less, and if it comes also it will be a problem for us perhaps. But if you are visiting some countries, for example Norway, Sweden, where the human population is less and they are not having human workforce, this is something in which they are living in. This is not a future for them anymore. And in this plethora of robots, these are the three segments: autonomous mobile robots, collaborative robots, and human-led robots. These are the three significant pillars in which the robots actually, how they look like. So these are the Alexas of the world. They also look like human, behave like human, and try to imitate human intelligence. They are also called the cobots, the collaborative robots. And these ones, the autonomous mobile robots, are those typically the robots, the machines which look like, are ruling the industry. Subjects related to AI. This is one area where we should focus our children. They should invest on the career option side. So definitely computer science is there. Apart from that, psychology is coming up as one of the most significant input giving device to robotics industry, because now the question of ethical usage of robots and parametric conditions, the conscience, whether we should do or not do, these kind of questions are so prevalent in the market that without a psychological background, without understanding the emotional intelligence and all those related areas, it will be facing for a big jeopardy for the human civilization. So psychology is one of the areas where we should guide our children to study more. Definitely neuroscience is there, because with neural networks and natural language processing, the robots are typically trying to be behaving more and more like human. So unless and until we know how our neural system works, we will not be able to create the future generation robots. The study of neurology itself has become a very important subject of choice. This has nothing to do with medicine. The doctor is done some research and found that neuron science itself is coming up as a new branch of biology for helping us in the, not only for the biological areas but also for the artificial intelligence and robotics. Mathematics and quantum mathematics are the pillars of all the coding language, all the algorithms, all the rule, all the software logic which is required. So typically, 3-4 years back also I have seen people with mathematics honors are not getting job. They are like normal, they are doing BSc, MSc and then they are struggling to fit in somewhere in the software industry. Nowadays, a person with mathematics MSc is highly rated in the software industry because of the quantum theory knowledge, because of the computational powers, because of the core mathematics concept which is now going to feed the data industry and the software industry. The mathematics graduate, of course good ones with good marks, good reputed knowledge, plain and simple MSc mathematics are given more package than a computer science engineer. The trend I am talking about is last 2 years trend where we are going out and having mathematics honor students, BScs and MScs with very high computational thought process and computational intelligence. So again, our mindset that people studying in general line, which was a setback for us even 5-6 years back, they don't get jobs, is now getting redefined. People with general background, physics honors, data science, statistics, mathematics are becoming more relevant in the industry than a normal IT engineering background students perhaps. And obviously, sociology, philosophy, these are again coming from the environmental consciousness, from the ethical part of it. So these elements are extremely important to have. Even an engineering student nowadays must undergo some areas of study in sociology and psychology to make sure that the action he or she is undertaking is in line of ethical principles, conscious environment. So these are the subjects which of course is very important. Robots are now also being made which should understand even beyond English, like natural language, your mother tongue and all. So linguistics also become, we are also hiring people from a humanities background with Bengali as a subject as well to make sure the interpretation and all these things happen at a very seamless level. So these are the subjects on top of engineering which are coming up very strongly and going to change our definition of talent acquisition in the marketplace. Okay, coming to the ethical consideration, these are the 3-4 things which we should keep in mind. Transparency and accountability is the topmost importance one while designing a robot, because how the robot works is completely based on the data fed to the robot. The robot cannot filter a good data or a bad data. For the robot, it is just a piece of data. And depending on all the data fed to the robot, it will take a decision. So, the manufacturers of the robot, how they are programming the robots, they should be absolutely clear on the transparency and the accountability of the programming. Because unless and until this is transparent, we will not know that how the robot is going to behave. It might do something unethical also because it doesn't have a consciousness of its own. It might be doing something unethical without knowing. So the accountability of the manufacturer is of highest importance, that the data which is being fed to the robot is transparent, is clean, and also it is a good data. Good data means fair data. Similarly, fairness and non-discrimination. If I am the manufacturer, if I am biased, if I am having discrimination attitude in me, automatically the device which I manufacture, I create, will be a footprint or a mimicry of my thought process. So unless and until I am fair and I am non-discriminating in attitude, the devices which I am manufacturing also becomes biased. So we have to remove the bias from the manufacturing of robots by making sure that my thought process is completely unbiased and it is fair. Informed consent. This is what I was telling you about hyper-personalization. Nowadays, our data, our personal data is completely open to the market. Even Facebook, Twitter, social media handles which we are using, we are always exposed to data, and we don't know at what point of time our data is handed over to a third party. Because sitting here, maybe somebody else is checking my profile, my preferences, the places I have visited, the clothes I have purchased, the brand of car I own. So at present, even if you are exchanging a form, maybe a Microsoft Teams form, a survey form, many of you, if you are doing a PhD or your students are doing a PhD, we do a lot of surveys. 2 years back, when we used to collect a survey, it was very open. We didn't bother to inform the person that you are giving your consent to the fair use of this personal data. That clause itself was not there. But now, if you are going to run a survey on a particular line, you have to specifically ask for the informed consent of the response coming out of the responder, because I might be not comfortable to share my personal data with somebody else. Informed consent is something of paramount importance, even for small things. So in my workplace, I've seen, even one year back, I used to send out mass mailers that you have not done these certifications. Your certification is going to expire. If you don't do this, there will be HR actions against you. Unless and until you complete this course, your appraisals will not be done in time. So we got a strict warning to the GDPR committee that you cannot send mass mailers like that anymore. So even for you, if you are planning to send a mass mailer to the students that your grades are not good or maybe your assessments are not complete, that is violation of personal data at present. You cannot do that everywhere. Either you have to send one-to-one emails stating the same points which I told, or you have to take written or at least consent from the person that I am going to use your responses for my study and analysis. So it is completely prohibited now. It has to be informed consent, otherwise you cannot use even a small data. Okay. 2 to 5 minutes we have. 5 minutes is fine. And of course, we have to be mindful of the data and the cultural sensitivity of the data. So this is about the challenges and ethical considerations. Threats of excessive automation, we all discussed till such time, job displacement, security, data privacy, bias and all these things which we know. But we as human beings have to go beyond this to make sure that we are not becoming another. So these are the market norms which came up. Google's DeepMind, ChatGPT from Microsoft, Copilot from Microsoft, reading codes from Microsoft again, and completely AI-driven shopping tool by Amazon. These are the 5 top of the town in AI and robotics now. You can Google it and see that what are the features for these products. I am personally using this Microsoft Copilot, which takes a tour on the Microsoft Teams and tells you what you should do for the entire day. It plans your day, it tracks your day, it monitors your day, and also makes the next day's routine. So Copilot is one of very highly used productivity analyzer tool, very much top of the town. And these are few more: Time Kettle, AI Bird Freezer, Transparent TV, Water Maker. So these are under research. The pilot beta version is already in place. Transparent TVs are like, it will not occupy any space in your home anymore. It will be just hanging in the air. You can watch your TV programs and switch it off. It doesn't have a physical picture. So this is something I've seen in the LG labs. They are working on it. And water makers, they are trying to make drinking water out of moisture automatically when the moisture content is more than the requisite amount. So that is it. Now the future depends less in your hand how far is too far. And as said by one of the greatest scientists, I visualize a time when we will be 2 robots, what dogs are to humans nowadays. So whether we will be the taskmaster or task givers is only a question of time. That is it from my side. I have my number shared with Dubashish. If you have any questions, any particular investigation or any lab visit or any kind of robotics process automation if you would like to know about what are the market trends, what are the ethical considerations in manufacturing of robots, what we should do, what we should not do, the 5 parameters to think upon and all those. In case you have a question, you can get it out to Bashish. I'll be more than happy to answer. So yeah, I have visited SAP Labs and directly working with them in some of the machine learning of SAP, wherein they're trying to automate various leakage, like water leakage, milk spillage and all those areas through robots and automation. We can have a very detailed discussion if any of you would like to. With this, I end the class. Thank you very much for being so patient and giving me a chance to share my experience with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, the robotics is also very important subject for me, as it was my subject of research in my PhD, robotics and machine learning and algorithms. Thank you, ma'am, because you have shared so many things within this span of time.
Thank you.
Like you have started from the robotic surgery and then the flows of different industrialization, and at the end you have finished the subject related to AI, and this part I like the most because one information that is very much important for us, that when we are talking about the AI, then we may think that AI will replace everything and everybody, but not that. Like AI, machine learning, when we are talking, it is very much related to mathematics. Now, if we don't have strong mathematical background or in like that, we will not be able to understand. Yes. So it is very much important for us to remember that mathematics and the other basic subjects that we have learned, that is going to be also important for us in the coming era. And thank you for all the information. Thank you. So we will start the next session. I think Amral sir is also there. Okay, yes, sir.
Good luck, sir.
So ma'am, we are handing over a token of respect. Please receive it. Given by our coordinator, sir. Okay, we will be starting our online session. Professor Amlan Chakraborty is already there.